Hello and welcome to Stork'd, the podcast in which we talk about all things family and family building. Here is where we celebrate the many beautiful ways that families come together. I'm your host, Julia. I am a solo mom by choice, and I just love talking about different family structures and different family units. Today on the podcast, we have two guests, Ronit and Vida, and they are the co-founders of something called WeNatal. You may have heard of them as a supplement company for both men and women in their fertility journey. This is a really amazing episode. Ronit and Vida were besties, like absolute best friends, talk about chosen family. This is that family. And then they both unfortunately experienced the worst possible milestone one can experience with a bestie, and that is they both had miscarriages around the same time. Ugh. Awful. So we're going to talk about miscarriage. We're going to talk about their experiences with it, my experience with it. We're going to talk about the founding of WeNatal. And essentially, after these miscarriages, these two ladies looked at each other and said, there has to be something better. They went deep in the research and they discovered that one of the things that is being underserved and under-discussed and under-treated is male sperm. And so here we now have WeNatal, which is an incredible supplement company for men and women's products, and a great story of founding a company that really has an impact for those of us struggling with infertility. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful episode. I know that you are going to love it. And if you do, here's a couple things you can do. First, share it with a friend. Maybe they need to know about a great supplement that might help their fertility journey. Second, sign up for our newsletter. Let's Start a Family. It's on Substack. And finally, if you're curious about trying these supplements, Ronit and Vida have given us this really amazing gift, and that is listeners to Stork'd can get a free 30-day supply of their fish oil. So you just go on WeNatal/Stork'd, STORKD, and that's the code to get that free fish oil. It's really good. Fish oil is really disgusting, and theirs really isn't. So without further ado, here is Ronit and Vida, and we go deep, guys. It's definitely a great episode. Oh my gosh, ladies, I am so excited to have you here at Stork'd, where we talk about all things family and family building. Let's start with a softball. Can you introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Vida Delrahim, co-founder of WeNatal, and I'm Ronit, Vida's co-founder. And we're co-founders, we're best friends, and we're like sisters. And we're so happy to be here because we both had a fertility journey that we'll talk about. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, and we're happy to share with your listeners our story because back when we were in the midst of things, listening to podcasts like this one definitely helped us.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you saying that it helped you. I happened to find you guys at the moment that I needed you the most, which doesn't always happen. You know, sometimes I'm trying to find content on behalf of the listeners in this podcast, and that may or may not be what I need. But in this particular moment, I discovered you just after I had a miscarriage and was kind of reeling and trying to figure out what was going on in my life. And you guys shared some stories that were very personal, very intimate, and that led you to start this company, WeNatal, that were exactly what I needed to hear at the time. So would you mind rewinding back? Tell us a little bit about your respective families and how they came to be. And, you know, we can weave in the WeNatal origin story to that as well.
Absolutely. So it's a fun story. Ronit and I met in our young corporate days, kind of living in LA, living life together, and we're single, kind of exploring what it meant to be like in relationships, exploring kind of our, advancing in our corporate careers, what many people can relate to. And our current family, how we got here, we never envisioned, kind of the journey that we would take. I don't think anybody ever does, but we currently have two girls each. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. Ronit has a 7 and almost 8-year-old and 3-year-old. And the journey to getting here was definitely not a smooth one. And what led to our inception of WeNatal and what kind of happened in our journeys was that in 2020, we experienced miscarriages a week apart. Unbeknownst to me, it was my second, and I had gotten all the typical answers that the doctor told me now 2 times. It just happens. Could be your age, could be stress, could be anything. You're lucky you even got pregnant. Keep trying. Very dismissive culture. And Ronit was working alongside one of the best functional medicine practitioners, Dr. Mark Hyman. And she wasn't willing to just accept these answers. And thank God it happened a week apart because I was just going with the flow and blaming myself. I went into a massive postpartum depression after my first one and literally retraced everything I ate, the workouts, the stress at work, and didn't think it could be anything other than me.
And when it happened to me, again, like Vida mentioned, I was working in the wellness space at that point for about 4 years. And I was doing all the things, all the things that I'm sure you've talked about extensively on this podcast, whether it's like, the clean lifestyle, eating organic food, prioritizing protein, taking all of the supplements. And when I had my miscarriage, I honestly couldn't believe it. So first of all, I think one of my learnings coming out of this experience was how common miscarriages are. And, going into pregnancy, knowing that it's common, because honestly, I couldn't believe it. It was my second pregnancy. With my first, it was pretty much smooth sailing. And I think like a lot of times being in the wellness space, you think you're immune to this sort of thing, but you're not. We're all just people.
I had the exact same reaction. I talk about miscarriage all the time. I could recite the statistics. I can recite the statistics. I can tell you about people's emotional journeys, having interviewed them or been contacted separately, with people who just want to share their stories and they don't want to be on the podcast. And so I felt like I was really knowledgeable about miscarriage. And had you asked me, what do you know about miscarriage? I would have told you all the facts and figures. And when I was in the doctor's office and they said there's no heartbeat, I was like, no, this can't happen to me, right? Like there's just no way that it's easy to hear somebody's story or to see the stats and just not confront the reality that it could truly happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think when it happened to me and I started to listen to podcasts like your podcast and learning about people that ended up having, miscarriages back to back to back and then having healthy children, it gave me the hope that I needed. So that's one thing, knowing that it's out there, but also knowing that for some reason you're on this path and on this journey and things will turn out how they should turn out for you. So I think that was one big takeaway. And the other thing, just being in the functional medicine space and really diving into the root cause of miscarriages, I learned, and my biggest aha was that men are 50% of the reason why women experience miscarriages. And by men, I mean sperm quality. And so that's one thing that, I called Vida when I learned that information. And it's literally, I remember the moment that I learned this and I was on PubMed searching for sperm miscarriage. And you could see, all of the scientific research that's out there, thousands upon of studies, and yet nobody is talking about it. So when I called Vida, I said to her, Vida, there could be another piece to the story that we're not, no one is talking about. And the biggest aha was when we learned that men who take antioxidants have a 4 times of a higher chance getting their partner or wife pregnant. And so we were like, wait, why don't any men we know, why aren't our husbands on any supplementation, antioxidants? And that kind of led us to the whole WeNatal journey, which started off as being a men's prenatal. We ended up developing a women's prenatal just because there was a huge need in the market. But more than being a prenatal brand, we're a brand that prides itself in education and information and content because there is so much misinformation out there and there's so many people and couples and women suffering, and we want to be able to give them the answers that they're looking for and the hope.
And I want to go just right back to that moment when she called you and said it could be sperm, right? You've just gone through, you've retraced all of your steps. You've gone through and said, is it the workout? Is it what I'm eating? Is it something that I did wrong? Did I not think positively enough? When somebody says to you, it could be your partner, what did that feel like to you in that moment?
It was honestly that brain blowing up emoji. Like, it took me a moment to grasp the fact that it's like a big duh, right? Like, we know it takes egg and sperm to make a baby at the simplest terms. But the fact that we're all educated, like pride ourselves on knowing the research, like Ronit said, she was educating me to do all the things. I was just shocked. I was floored that like we're in the modern ages and yet still the burden of fertility is solely placed on the woman. And it was just, it made me like, I think I felt all the emotions. I was angry. I was like relieved. I was like, okay, it could not just be me. And if I'm honest, like I lead a very like active, healthy lifestyle. My husband may or may not love junk food and partake in all the things that are not healthy. So it's like, how could I never even have thought about that? Why aren't doctors telling us, there's more both of us can do? And my favorite analogy is kind of like society says, we're trying, we're having a baby, we're pregnant. Where's like the we in this? And that's kind of the origins of WeNatal. We want to optimize both partners. We want to give hope to everybody and really bring the couple closer together and support all family types to put their best foot forward.
And that's so interesting because, first of all, I've never really appreciated the we in your title. And this is not about finger pointing. It's not like who's to blame. Did you not eat healthy enough? Did I not eat healthy enough? It's about collectively working together for this shared goal, if you have a partner in your life, of having a healthy baby. And so I don't want anyone to hear this and say, oh, now you're blaming men. No, it's, as I understand, it's like, let's make us both healthy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did blame my husband for a hot. We're human, right? We're human in that sense. But once you learn the research, we're like, oh, it does matter what he eats, what he does, like his lifestyle behaviors. We're both in this together. And once we realized, Ronit put both of our husbands on a regimen, we got all the supplements. We basically concocted what is now WeNatal. We got them to just literally look at the research. It's also much easier talking to a partner or anyone in your life when you base it on the research. And that was a very easy discussion. They just didn't know.
Yeah. So we put them on the prenatal, but essentially antioxidant, like an antioxidant blend plus omega-3s, which, men have the amazing ability to regenerate sperm every 71 days. So they have essentially a new batch of sperm. And for us women, we have the eggs that we're born with, and we're not generating new eggs on a continual basis. We can improve the egg quality as it matures, but men have this gift. This is a gift that they have. And this is a gift that they can give to their child for the rest of their lives. So we say the sperm in your man today was basically made 71 days ago. So really, like, a man should take 2 to 3 months to optimize their diet, their lifestyle, and take a prenatal for men, an omega-3 fatty acid, and they have the ability to completely transform their count, their morphology, the DNA damage that's in the sperm, and all of those things contribute to pregnancy loss or pregnancy success and infertility. When we hear the stats coming from, for instance, assisted reproductive technology, there are women that are going through IVF and IUI that have never even had their partner checked.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, going back to the brain blowing emoji, like, we are on a mission to educate. And I always joke with my parents, my parents listen to every single podcast we go on. So they'll be listening to this one too. Hi, Mom and Dad. I joke with my dad that I never in my life thought I'd be talking about sperm so much. We're on a mission. We're on a mission to educate because we don't want women to go through what we went through if they don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a really important note to add. It's not just about a healthy pregnancy and avoiding miscarriage, which again was our journey, but it's about the future lifelong health of your children. If you have a girl, that can be passed on 2 generations. So we talk a lot about like men who want super babies and the athletes and this and that, but really, like, wouldn't you want to take that few months to like give everything you've got and, have the best insurance policy that you're doing? Like, nothing is, we can't control everything. Our world is more toxic. There's so many things, unfortunately, that are out of our control. This is about the optimism about what we can control.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I'm thinking about two things. One, I'm thinking about the cost of having babies, and particularly if you're using assistance, medical assistance, ART, IVF, IUI. It's so expensive and it is so time consuming. You're losing months. So to me, the cost of 3 months and some prenatals is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket relative to the emotional toll, the financial toll, the loss of time to a miscarriage or a failed IVF cycle.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking about the cost to relationship dynamics. And I've had the privilege of talking to Eve Rodsky a couple times, and she does this work around balance and gender equity in relationships. And it's so interesting how we can say, okay, how are we going to divvy up our work life chores and how we're taking care of our kids or how we're dealing with our finances or who's walking the dog. We don't necessarily say, how are we going to bring equity into our baby making experience, right? It's like, I'm going to do all the work in terms of feel the emotional burden of not being able to conceive, or I'm going to find the doctor. I'm going to go through all the injections and hormones. I'm going to carry the baby. And like, where's the male partner if you have a male partner in all of this?
Yeah. And actually, I always say that our WeNatal men are going to be the best co-parents and partners because they are involved from the get-go. They have and men want to be part of it. They just don't know how. And with WeNatal, it's a solution for the partner to be part of it. And I cannot tell you, Julia, how many men we have that jump on nutrition consults. We give all of our subscribers free nutrition consults. And some men join with their partners, some men join alone. I can't even tell you how much joy it brings me to hear this when we get inquiries from them, when they email us to ask about, the things that we talk about, sauna use, or heat, or whatever it may be. These men are getting involved, and we love to see it. And that's where the equity, and when we imagine like what we want to see the world like, for our daughters, it will be a more equitable place because, we're kind of like starting a movement.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's so disheartening to me that your origin story started with a shared tough experience with a miscarriage. That's the kind of thing you want to go through milestones with your best friend, like meeting partners around the same time and having babies around the same time, but you don't want to go through that milestone together. And yet here you are having created something so beautiful. Before we go into the creation of WeNatal and what goes into the supplements, can you tell us a little bit about if somebody's going through a miscarriage right now, what do you want them to know about their experience, about their future fertility? Having been there, having created a business around this concept, is there anything you would say to somebody who's experiencing that right now?
Oh my gosh, there's so much that we want to say. I will just share that from my personal experience is when I had my miscarriage, I was 41. I remember when I found out that I was pregnant, it was my 41st birthday. And I was in the doctor's office and they're like, oh my God, happy birthday. This is your birthday present. And then in January, I found out about the miscarriage and I was devastated. I was older and I didn't know, okay, well, I guess, I felt so lucky that I got pregnant, but also I was like, will I be able to have another child? And in my case, I had a friend that had texted me and said, this isn't the end of your story. And I remember holding on to that belief and truly believing that it wasn't the end of my story. And it wasn't, Julia. I put my husband on prenatals or nutrients to support his sperm. And I did actually a few things on my end to heal. I did 3 months of acupuncture. I did not try for 3 months. I really took the time to focus on myself and my healing. And 3 months later, on my first try, I was pregnant and I had Emma at the age of 42. So I always say 2020 was a crazy year for everybody because we know why. But for me, it was also like January, I had a miscarriage. March, I started the WeNatal with Vida. And then December, I had Emma, my second daughter. And so I just want to say to anyone who is experiencing loss right now, it is devastating. It is so hard. It's literally, I never understood the concept of trauma until I experienced my loss. But also, you'll get through this. We're resilient people. We will get through this, and one day you'll look back and understand why this was your path. So that's just my 2 cents on advice to those who are experiencing loss.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And very similarly, I think I mentioned to you after my first one, I really went down a horrible downward spiral. And after the second one, well, it's not something you want to go through with your best friend. Having someone to lean on saved me. I will say this is when friends and family, I didn't even know until I started sharing my story. People at work started to show up. My own mom had miscarriages. I had no idea. And there is, when you're ready, some healing in sharing your story and finding people who have been in your shoes and leaning on your village, because you're going to need that village also when you have kids. But there's one other component of why WeNatal is not just a supplement. And we came out with a beautiful manifestation journal. It's a tool that I honestly wish I had going through these two, but it gets you back to a practice of gratitude and manifesting that family of your dreams. And really, even if it didn't happen right now, believing that it will happen. And there's so much impact of stress in our daily lives that a little bit of gratitude can go a long way for healing and for, getting your body ready to try again. So a couple minutes of gratitude and just being kind to yourself. It's really easy not to. I definitely learned that the hard way, but knowing you did everything, and listen, you could do everything right and it could still happen. So just knowing there is optimism on the other side. Give yourself time to heal and lean on the people around you that can support you during this tough time.
I love that advice. We talk a lot about community as family on this podcast, how to build your community and thinking about family broader than the biological family that we often compose.
Oh, yeah.
And it's times like these. I mean, I've had conversations a lot, and even the past 24 hours with people who have come out of the woodworks and wanted to talk about what's going on. And there's so much shame around this experience and so much fear of talking about it, or even a fear that if I say it out loud, it's going to re-trigger the emotions that I've shoved down deep really far. And so I appreciate the perspective. I just wrote it down. This isn't the end of your story. And I appreciate the perspective around gratitude and taking a couple minutes to sit with yourself. Yeah.
And I just want to add one more thing about gratitude, because your listeners who are in the midst of things right now can think well, what is there to be grateful for? That's just they're past it. So they could say, be grateful. Right. And I think, from my experience, I have this amazing doctor that's a good friend of mine that had cancer, and that shared with me that when she had cancer, this was 30, 40 years ago, Oprah had just come out with the concept of gratitude for healing. And her mom back then told her, okay, you need to start a gratitude journal. And she was like, but I'm not grateful for anything. I have cancer. I'm 30 years old. And she basically was like, okay, well, today I'm grateful for my smoothie. Today I'm grateful for the sun that's shining, and slowly gratitude is like a muscle. Slowly it becomes second nature to be grateful for all the things that you do have, and realize that you're living a life of abundance, even though that one thing you want isn't here yet. Yeah. Your life is full, and believing that you're on the right path.
Yeah. I didn't think I was going to share this, but I'll share two things. One is I find that the gratitude practice I started in my 20s is really serving me as a parent. There are times when I want to scream at my child because he won't put on his damn shoes or whatever it is. And if I can just stop in the moment, not always, but if I can stop in the moment and say, I'm really grateful that you're my kid, or like, I really love you, or just like it changes the dynamic between us. So that gratitude, it might get you through the hard times, but it also help you later.
Anything you set in place now is going to make you so much stronger as a parent. And so even though it's so hard to sometimes believe things happen for a reason, that's something that I try to go back to even in the darkest times. And it doesn't always make sense.
Well, let's take a big pivot if you're open to it. we're in the heavy stuff, but out of the heaviness, came something really special. And they always say that you have to plant your seeds in the mud and then the beautiful flowers grow from that. So now you have this company that's helping so many people get pregnant, both partners, if you're in a heterosexual couple, and alternative families too, if you're not. And I know you've paid a lot of attention to the manufacturing and production of your product and exactly what supplements go into it. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got from I'm in despair, I feel like crap, my family life, is coming together, but it's slow and I'm just gone through a miscarriage too. I've built a company that is remarkable. Like, walk us through those early days of building WeNatal and what went into this product.
Well, we always joke that it started with a Google Doc. It started
Whole Foods.
We met at Whole Foods in the Valley because she happened to be there and they had a little coffee shop and sat down with the Google Doc, which we called Bestie Co. because we were like, we don't know what this company is going to be called, but we do know that it's two besties coming together.
I love that.
We always knew we wanted to work together. We had like an inseparable bond when we met in the corporate world. But again, never knew it would be down this space. But literally what stemmed from it is like, we deserve better. Our friends and family deserve better. And also we cannot allow anyone to feel as alone and burdened in this journey anymore. Change needs to happen. At that point, it was 2020, enough is enough. And so it was really on the mission of Ronit mentioned, there's so much we could do to help men because no one's talking about this. When we accepted, there was literally no one talking about men's prenatals. We're really excited that there's more coming to the forefront. And on the women's side, we didn't actually think the world needed another prenatal. There was so many out there. But when you really dig deep, they were either incredibly expensive, hard to obtain, way too many capsules, which for her was no problem. For me, I couldn't do it. So there was a consumer issue. And then the really inexpensive or accessible ones, really, if you looked at the products in it, it was not enough ingredients, not synthetic forms that we don't want to take. And then if you look at it, there's a whole paragraph of other things that shouldn't be ingested, much less when you're trying to conceive a baby. So we realized, okay, it's time to change the game. And really it started with that, a vision of there is a gap. The world needs something better. She was coming from a wealth of resources in the functional medicine space, which is really about food as medicine, get to the cleanest, purest forms of bioavailable ingredients. And so I think it started with curating all these amazing doctors and nutritionists and experts. Obviously, we're not doctors, but we've learned a lot, but we backed ourselves with the best of the best, including Dr. Hyman, Kelly LeVeque, Bridget Tiggemeyer, Kathy Swift. There's so many experts guiding the formula. And that was really the beginning.
Yeah. The formulation was the foundation of everything. What we put in it was the foundation and figuring out, what nutrients are crucial. Not only was Vida sharing that we were taking a prenatal that had 8 capsules, on top of that, we had to add vitamin D because our prenatal only had 1,000 IUs. We had to add choline because our prenatal only had 300 milligrams and you need at least 400 plus. We had to add iron because our prenatal didn't have iron and we were both iron deficient. We had to add folate because our prenatal didn't have enough folate or folic acid. And so we were there popping, 12 pills a day. And we realized the consumer deserves better. The other thing that we were doing every day was we were throwing out little plastic sachets. And we were thinking we're here to create these healthy little humans, but what about the world that they're living in? They deserve a better world. So we created a system that's sustainable that includes, for those who haven't seen our product, we have on the initial month, they get a glass jar, and then every month they get a refill packet that's made out of recycled materials. And so we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. And then the other thing is both of us meeting at Nike and we felt like women and couples deserved a better brand experience with prenatals, and that it should be part of their lifestyle. So we created a beautiful package, a beautiful brand, and the consumer gets a vessel that they can include their prenatal in their house and on the go. Because we want to be also taking a prenatal, we want to be top of mind. It's about consistency. So that was very, very important to us on the creation. And honestly, we thought that the formulation would take us 3 months. It took us over a year.
Wow.
And then after launching WeNatal, there was a meta-analysis that came out that reviewed 200 studies and suggested optimal dosages of various nutrients in a prenatal. And based off of that study, we actually decided to reformulate WeNatal. And this was 6 months after launching. And it was a hard decision because reformulating a product means new packaging, updates to the website, dealing, what to do with the inventory that's left. But our mission has always been to be on the forefront of research. And I'm sure we're right now on the second version of our, formula, but I am sure that it will evolve with research, with studies that come out there, because that's our commitment to the consumer.
Yeah. And one thing that's really tricky as a consumer, I appreciate you sharing the story and how you've been so thoughtful about both packaging, formulation, and the consumer experience, like not just the brand experience, but what it's like to take these things and to travel with these things and to use these things on a daily basis. But it can be really confusing as a consumer to know what brand is best, right? You start comparing, this one has this many milligrams, this one has this many milligrams, and the range that's advisable based on Google may be a range. You're like, I don't know where I should fall in this range. Some of them have gorgeous packaging and great branding, and they're like always in your face on Instagram, and right. And others like look more medical, and like, how do you know which one of those is best? And I've had friends who've said, okay, between IVF round 2 and round 3, my egg retrieval rate increased by this, and it's probably my prenatal, so take this one. Or I've had a doctor say, try this one. And you're just like guessing at what prenatal is going to be best. And you have no way of knowing, right? There's no objective metric. Is my body responding to this? So for those people who are just like, how do I figure this out? What's your advice in choosing a prenatal?
Yeah, I feel that so deeply. And this morning, actually, a customer reached out and said that she ran our formula by her doctor, her OBGYN, and her doctor thinks that we have, too high of levels of various nutrients. And of course, I responded to her inquiry, but it is confusing because on one hand, you have these well-intentioned doctors that are there. And I really appreciate her doctor. Her doctor did some research for her. And I was like, okay, your doctor is awesome. Like if I had a doctor emailing back and forth with me, I'd be like, you're a great doctor. But doctors don't have nutrition education.
Right.
I believe that in your entire med school, there's about maybe 15 hours of nutrition education that goes into all of those years and years of training. So it is overwhelming and it is confusing. So I would say, like, just to guide your listeners from a super high level, the first thing that I do when I look at a nutrition label is I look at the additional ingredients. First, before looking into what's in it, let's make sure that it doesn't have a bunch of added junk in the product, right? You don't want fillers, binders, colors, extra preservatives. And a lot of prenatals that are just, on the shelves at Target or CVS have that additional junk for shelf life, for, whatever their reasons are, ease of manufacturing, etc. So making sure that there's no additional ingredients. The second thing is it's important to make sure that your prenatal and generally your supplements are third-party tested. Third-party testing is an outside agency that looks at your product and makes sure that the claims that you're making on your label are actually valid, right? So third-party testing is crucial. And what our third-party testing does is it also looks at your heavy metals. It looks at any type of bacterial contamination in the product. So making sure that your prenatal and supplement is third-party testing is key. For instance, our fish oil, a lot of people are worried about consuming fish products when they're pregnant because of mercury levels. You can see in our third-party testing document for our fish oil, we have 0 mercury, and we share that document with anybody that asks. So making sure that your product is third-party testing and that the company is willing to share it. And then the other thing to look at is the bioavailability of the ingredients. Not all ingredients are created equally, right? Just like how you have a pasture-raised egg and you have a conventional egg and they look completely different. So ingredients there's definitely a range in the ingredients, but from a high level, our perspective is that methyl B vitamins, methylfolate, folate is superior to folic acid. Folic acid is a nutrient that a lot of times, your doctor will say, take any prenatal, just make sure it has folic acid in it because methylfolate prevents neural defects. But a lot of people, when they take folic acid, which is a synthetic form, cannot convert it to the bioavailable form. So you want to make sure that your prenatal has the bioavailable form, which is a lot of times it's 5-MTHF or folate or methylfolate. So looking at that in the label, and then looking at choline and making sure that your prenatal has choline in it, because a lot of prenatals exclude it completely. So that's just from a high level. Now, prenatals are complicated. They have 24 nutrients, so I can get into each and every one of them. But from a high level, you want to make sure it has choline. You want to make sure it has bioavailable B vitamins, which folate is a bioavailable B, and that it doesn't have all that additional junk that is third-party tested. And then you're pretty much good to go.
And how should you think about prenatals during the conception process versus once you've actually achieved pregnancy? Should you be supplementing differently when you're trying to conceive versus when you are currently pregnant?
That's a really good question. And you have brands now that are creating a prenatal, a postnatal, prenatals for the different phases. I personally feel like this journey is so complicated as it is and is so stressful that if I had to switch a prenatal based off of what trimester you're in, I'd be so overwhelmed and it's so confusing. The way that we formulated WeNatal is it has everything you need for the pre, the during, and the post. And the post is also something that we've been very, very vocal about lately because so many women are experiencing postnatal depletion, and it takes, some research shows it takes up to 7 years to recover from pregnancy and birth. And so just making sure that women continue to take prenatals postpartum, definitely if they're breastfeeding for the entire time of breastfeeding, but at least for a year after postpartum, after they give birth, because the baby will take all the nutrients that they need out of you. So you need to make sure that you're repleting those nutrients. There's a lot of blood loss during pregnancy. So you want to make sure that you're taking a prenatal with iron postpartum. So that's my little PSA on postnatals of having all in one was important for us.
Does a postnatal or prenatal taken postnatally impact mental health, like postpartum anxiety and depression?
Definitely.
Sure.
I think there are a lot of nutrients that are in our prenatal, like B vitamins, that can help support, the overall mental state. And just generally, when you're nutrient depleted, you will have more depression, anxiety. But also another thing that we are very vocal about is making sure that if you do have those symptoms, to make sure to go to the doctor and talk to them about it. A lot of people have postpartum depression and they don't know that the underlying cause of it is thyroid issues. There are a lot of issues and imbalances that can take place because of, the hormone fluctuations, the stress of the pregnancy, the stress of not sleeping. And we want to empower women to go to their doctors and demand testing, demand looking at their, blood levels, and not just think, okay, it's in my head.
Right.
I need to be, this is just a phase. It's okay to feel like this. It's not okay to feel like that.
And I think all of this goes back to being your own health advocate. It is so crucially important in any phase, whether you're trying to conceive postpartum, to really listen to your body, back to picking ingredients. Like, you have to do the research. You have to know what you're getting is right for you. And like, we worked with amazing doctors, but they don't have the same nutrition background as, others. And so all of this goes back to really trusting your gut and doing the research.
Oh, it's so hard though. I find that in the parenting process, whether you're in the conception stage, currently pregnant, or postnatal, the trusting your gut can be hard because you're getting so much information and there's so much second guessing that happens. So I appreciate the comment.
I also just know I was so thinking, this is mom brain. I'm supposed to be in a fog for months and months after, but there's things you can do. And I guess that's back to trust your gut. If you know you're not you, and I definitely felt that it was things were not right, but my labs were coming out, quote unquote, normal. Doesn't mean just because it's normal, it's optimal, and you can be doing things to make it better. Or sometimes the normal range isn't where you're excelling. And so that the trust your gut is more about, your body better than any practitioner or expert. You need to be the advocate for yourself.
I'm really glad you said that. In another episode, I talked to somebody who is a pelvic floor therapist, and we were talking about how this concept that it's okay to pee yourself is not, we've normalized things that are not great for us. Right. And just because it's normal doesn't mean that you should have to live with it. Right. And your comment just now is the first time I've ever heard somebody say, yeah, mom brain doesn't have to be normal. Right?
Exactly.
Or it can be normal, but not optimal. And that's an interesting distinction. So I hope, listeners, that you're taking that tidbit, because that was a mind blown moment right there for me.
Yep.
Okay, so ladies, now you guys both have 2 kids. You've built this company together. You called yourself sisters. So in some ways, I imagine this really almost like a blended family that you've created.
Really a blended family. Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? What's it like to work with your best friend / sister?
It's a dream. We literally have Saturday play dates where our kids just run around and run amok, and we're working all day. And it's like the dream that you wish you had. The kids love each other, and we get to build something we truly believe in. I think that's the best part. Honestly, the goosebump moments are the testimonials, are the positive pregnancy tests that customers email us sometimes before their partner. It's really actually knowing we're, as cheesy as it sounds, we're changing the world. We're helping people. We're normalizing the gender paradigms around fertility being both partners. It's really that. And you kind of have to pinch yourself. Of course, we fight like sisters too. I mean, she was critiquing me right before this podcast. So it's the best thing ever. And yeah, we're learning, we're growing.
But it's awesome to be doing something that you love to do with your best friend. And honestly, we work every single weekend. We call it bestie days. And it doesn't feel like work. We have so much fun doing it. Our kids love each other. Our husbands love each other. And it's great. And we literally, yesterday, Vida was busy, and I remember it was 11:30, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to her for I don't know, 4 hours since I woke up. This is crazy. We literally call each other. What's the average? It would be
at
least 25 times a day.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 to 10, but yeah, it's probably 25.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's the dream in some ways.
It really is. And the other thing that's a dream is that even though both of our backgrounds are in marketing, our skill set is so different. Vida handles everything that I literally despise. If I had to do it myself. And anytime somebody calls me and they're like, what's your advice for starting a business? I'm like, you need to find a co-founder that complements you, because I can't even tell you how much we complement each other. And it's just the best. It's so fun. And yeah, like we fight, but we don't like really fight. Like,
No, I've grown a thicker skin working with her. It's great.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you built families, you built your own families, you've built the family of WeNatal, both between you two and with your customers, and you help people create their own families. Can you each tell me what family means to you?
oh my gosh, family is everything to me. Everything. Family is to me like my immediate family, like the ones my siblings. I have 3 siblings, my parents. I talk to my siblings and my parents every single day, even though my parents are in Israel. Family is so important to me. But then the village and the family that you create is also just like another level. Couldn't live without them. Couldn't live without Vida. Couldn't live without some other friends that have become family. And I don't know what it means to me. I'm very much like a family-oriented person. I love dinners and having a full house and having just like feeding people and just being together. And I feel so grateful that I have like my immediate like family that's amazing, but also for the family that I've created here in Los Angeles.
Oh, I love that. Rita, do you have the same perspective or?
Not, I mean, literally the same. It's life. It's love. Like, it's so much more powerful the family you create, like outside of your immediate, like the people who just become because of your village is truly, I never understood like it takes a village until I've had kids and all the things. And there's just culture, it's passion, it's celebrating milestones, the good and the bad. And that's the other thing. The village really comes in handy, not just for celebrating the good stuff, but also being by your side for the tough stuff. I mean, whenever I'm in tears or life has thrown me a pickle, she's my first phone a friend and she gets me through it. She'll talk me off my ledge. And that's what it means. And makes really amazing food. And I enjoy eating really amazing food. So that's how I compliment her there.
Yeah, I enjoy eating great food too. I think that's wonderful. I always had this dream of somebody who, like, when you think about if you were to compose your perfect friend group, you want to have like the chef and you want to have the person with a great vacation home.
Yes.
Obviously, you want good human qualities too, but
attributes help. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. This has been so fun. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with the Stork'd audience?
I would just say that just from a high level, one thing that I'm so passionate about is the preconception timeframe and how much there is so much that you could do to improve your own fertility before having to resort to assisted reproductive technology. And all of those things will also help your ART outcome. So on WeNatal, we have an amazing guide. If you go to wenatal.com/guide, they could talk about all of those things. And then also on our social, you can follow us. We're sharing tips on a daily basis. We also respond to every single DM, every single email. So if anybody needs a friend, if anybody needs to talk, needs resources, we're here for them.
Yeah. And
it is that community we wish we had. And so no question is too much or too little. We're here for all of it. And we have a private Facebook group for our subscribers. So there's a lot of areas where we can be vulnerable together, get expert resources and guides. And that's why this brand exists.
Okay. So tell me again, where can we find you? Website, socials, and what are we going to find on your website?
WeNatal.com is our website. We have the most robust blog area. Which has, like, if you search for egg freezing, IVF, enhancing sperm, you will find articles upon articles from our experts. We have a research section that links to all of the research studies on sperm quality, egg quality, all of the things. Our social is at @we_natal, and we post a lot of fun videos and we make it educational and fun to pass along the information. And then to email us, care@wenatal.com. We're here if you need anything. And then I know that we created a special offer for your audience. We have an amazing fish oil that if anyone has taken fish oil, you know that it's not a pleasurable process usually.
No, it stinks. Yeah.
It stinks. Our omega-3 is incredible. It's a DHA EPA combination, and your audience will get a free omega-3 when they subscribe to WeNatal. If they go to wenatal.com/Stork'd, they'll get a value of $34.
So awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. And if this episode hasn't convinced you to try WeNatal, let me tell you that it's a wonderful. I love the packaging. I've been gifted some from you guys, and I love the packaging. I love how eco-friendly it is. I love the research you've put into it, so I don't have to do as much on my own. And so I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to Stork'd with your host, Julia Carroll. This podcast is changing the conversation around the ways people define and create family. If you like what you hear, please support us by sharing with friends and following on Instagram at Stork'd_podcast. We also always appreciate it when you rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information, visit storkedpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter. That's STORKD podcast.com.